Can you hear me, Lo?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. Welcome to Mograph lunch.
Thanks for
we'll
having me.
of course we'll give a few folks some time to trickle in, but yeah, I love these conversations because one, they're really casual, super low key, easy setup. But basically they're just meant to kind of, while people are catching their daily meal. Well, I guess if you're on the West Coast, you're catching breakfast, East Coast getting some lunch, just to chat and catch up about what's going on, a little bit about you. I'm really excited to dive in to some of your illustration work, and particularly how to put together a mural. I've always wondered, designing and drawing, in a small scale. I get that, but how do you translate that to a massive wall? I'm looking forward to diving into some of that today.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess first I was like a designer and then an illustrator. And then sometime along the way, I was really interested in doing murals. Growing up in New York, I see them everywhere. Not to
Sure.
be cliche like that, but yeah, so I see them everywhere. And that interest is always there, especially when you're creative. Um, so I think the first time that I did one was actually at a company I was working at.
Oh, that's
And
cool. That makes sense. They have an internal mural or something.
yeah, so
Oh,
my
nice.
boss at that time, his name was Adam Valika. He actually knew I liked to draw. So he was like, hey, why don't you just give it a try in our office? And I was like, I never did this before.
Oh, that's amazing. I love it. Well, part of the time I feel like it has to be a lot of people's career. Like even for me, getting into animation and motion design, it's I did it one thing, but then it kind of snowballs and people are like, oh, that thing you did was really cool. Can you do more of that? And then the next thing you know, you're like, oh, I guess I do animation for a living, or I do murals for a living, or illustrator for a living. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I think that's
Well,
kind of how it goes.
well, let's give a quick introduction for folks who are just joining us. Everyone who has been here before, welcome back. And if not, welcome to Mograph Lunch. These are short little snippets where we interview folks in and around the agency world, creative world, just to find out what folks have been up to, what are they working on, to introduce you to some new artists. Today, I'm joined by Loe Lee. Loe is an illustrator, designer, and muralist living in New York City. She's most known for weaving whimsical themes with everyday scenes. Loe has had the pleasure of working with clients such as Coca-Cola, Grubhub, Adobe, CVS, and Chinatown NYC. When she's not drawing or cuddling her dogs, she works as a senior designer for Vice Media Group. Currently, she is represented by Gerald and Cullen. Welcome to the show, Lo. Glad to have you here.
Thanks. I'm really excited to be here.
So maybe a good place to start for folks who don't know you, maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of how your career began, what brought you into this industry, you feel like?
Sure. So right now I work at Vice, obviously, and NYC, but before that I was doing design for a couple of other companies. So I really started as a designer. And I was a designer and I kind of drew on the side. But as I started drawing, I think I became a little bit more passionate for that. So I kind of, started dipping my toes into the illustration industry. And now I kind of do a little bit of both.
Oh, that's cool. Do you feel like that was a hard thing to do? I know folks who start as designers, then kind of become illustrators, or illustrators and try to push into design. Was that a challenge to kind of shift that thought process on one versus the other, you think?
It definitely was. Maybe not so much the thought process, because I think as a
Mm,
creative, you kind of think visually
right,
anyway.
right.
But I think I wasn't super good at drawing. And I know maybe other artists say that, but even my friends, we talk about it now and they're like, yeah, you weren't that good.
Friends
So
are
the
so
real
honest. That's
hard,
great.
I know. I think the real hard part was kind of learning to illustrate, the
Mm,
years that I was doing design. I
yeah.
did some of it in college. But like I said, it was just more like doodling on the side and doing it in my sketchbook. And it kind of graduated into doing it on my way to work, when I was
Yeah.
commuting. And so I think it was the actual learning to draw process that was probably the hardest
Mm.
part.
Interesting. So do you feel like with those doodles, was that something you kind of always done since childhood? And then at some point you're like, maybe there's a career in this?
Oh, definitely. So when I was little, I loved to draw. My
Mm,
dad is secretly an amazing artist, but my family, when they were growing up, they didn't really have anything. They
mm,
came here and, no money or anything like that. So I think they really wanted to focus on stability. So even though my dad taught me how to draw, he kind of had the caveat of like, but just do this for your enjoyment. Like, don't do this as a
right.
job because, stability is is
Sure.
is the priority, which in the context of where they're coming from, I think it's a very, common immigrant story. So yeah, I did a little bit of art in high school, but it's kind of like sketching in orange or like stuff like
Right.
that, right? And I wasn't very good at it either. So you kind of did it in high school, but it wasn't until I went to college that I kind of sneakily applied for design school, and I wanted to do, branding and business strategy because that was like the
Right.
closest kind of thing to doing something, practical and art that I kind of really knew this is what I wanted to do for a living, you know.
That's really cool. So you mentioned that your folks immigrated to this country. Where were they from originally?
They're from Hong Kong.
Hong Kong. Okay, that's great.
Yeah, and then
Do-
they came to Chinatown, and that's actually where I live now. So
okay, cool, nice. Do you still feel like I feel like having parents that are immigrants, that's just a very different upbringing than a lot of folks would experience, in the States or a mixture of some folks experience and some not. But I'm curious, like how much you feel like that really resonates and influences your art, like being so close to your parents and kind of where they came from. Like how has that kind of tradition kind of made its way into the art that you do, or do you feel like it has?
oh, definitely. I mean, my parents and I were super close. And I think that a lot of when I was growing up, yes, it was, in America, but we really wanted to keep to the Chinese culture, at least within the Asian culture, right? So even kind of our upbringing, you may have seen this in like popular Asian movies like Crazy
Yeah,
Rich Asians, but it's
yeah,
more
yeah.
about family and not so
Mm.
much about individual, right?
Hmm.
So what you do kind of helps to support race, and it's for the family, right? So everything that we do, it's really influenced by it. I mean, I think there's a lot of Asian things stylistically within my artwork, but honestly, most recently, I've been leaning into it a lot more. I think it's obviously because of the political climate, but
Sure.
even now, I'm working with Chinatown. We've been working together for a year, and you know, it's been really enlightening because I'm creating it for the local businesses. So it's really rewarding to hear their stories and then kind of representing that story, within the artwork, because there's a lot of similarities between our stories, right? We're proud from where we came from. We're really grateful for the opportunities that we have here. And we want to celebrate kind of a lot of the culture that it brings. So, we've been drawing a lot of things that represent Chinatown lately. And it's really rewarding, especially for, my family too, because this is where they grew up too.
Right, right. No, that's really cool. You struck a chord with me because I think as like designers and creators, there's this balance. It's taking on projects that of course like pay the bills so that we can like make a living.
Yes.
But then there's also like the cool, fun side projects, helping out local small businesses, things like that. How do you kind of balance that like intake of like, this is a cool project, but I know there's not a lot of funds there. I'm going to invest my time and energy in it because I believe in it versus like, I need to get this job that pays well so that I can keep this a profession. Like, do you have like a process to like balance those two at all?
Oh my God, that is like the question of my career because I have difficulty with it, like a real lot of difficulty. Because I think I was at a place, especially while I was freelancing, and when I was just getting started in
Mm,
illustration, where I was like, I'm gonna take everything that I can get, not only so
right.
I can live, but just so, any opportunity out, the opportunity to draw, I just want to get it, right?
Yeah,
So
right.
you kind of throw yourself at everything. And it's only super recently when I got my new job that I realized, okay, this job, I can't take everything anymore. So I have to really schedule out. So I'm only going to take projects that I am dying to do, honestly.
Cool.
And that's only been since this year started.
Oh man, and that's got to be like so hard, particularly when you're coming from a world where you really have been trying to take everything that comes your way, that you like, to have to parse
Yeah,
through that and choose is a challenge.
that was just
What
last year.
I know, it's crazy. So, all right, so you're working full time now for Vice Media Group, right? Okay.
Yes.
So what was you said it's only been about a year or so. I guess, were you freelance prior to that, just totally freelance and working on a bunch of different things, or were you in-house somewhere else?
Oh no. So Dice just started this year. I've only been
Oh,
there
wow.
actually for a few months. Yeah.
You're brand
And
new at
I
the
love it
gig
too.
there.
I am super new. Before that, I did freelancing for about 2 years, I would say. Before that, I was at an agency. But after
Okay.
the agency, I kind of went full-time freelance for illustration. And it was a huge struggle, those 2 years, I have to say.
Was it?
Yeah.
Well, I get that because it is like, freelance, I think is pretty glorified in our industry. Like, it's like, oh, it's so fun. You get to make your own rules. You can do all this stuff. But there's also this kind of like really hard side of like, you got to hustle. You got to go out and be the business person to go land the work and negotiate prices and all this sort of stuff that like sometimes I feel like isn't talked about a ton, on like the really bad side of it or stuff that makes it feel really tough. Was that ultimately a reason, like you said, it was a tough 2 years. So you were at the agency, you were freelancing for a bit, and then you kind of came into Vice. I guess that was a question I would have is like, what was the ultimate decision to kind of like, feeling like it was ready to kind of step away from freelance and into a full-time gig?
Oh yeah. I mean, I 100% agree with you when you said that this kind of freelancing dream is super glorified.
Mm,
And yes, it can be a dream for a lot of people. And while I was working at the agency, so many people encouraged me to death to go freelance. They're like, oh, like, why
right.
are you working here? Like, go freelance. Like, you could do it. You can make it. And even like, just like you said, the creative community before, it's just like so connected, so friendly, so welcoming. So when I started Instagram and I was super late to the game, uh, but people were so welcoming and they encouraged me so much when I did log on, which was only like maybe 3 years ago.
That's great.
Maybe.
Yeah,
Um,
you just got on Instagram. Now we're on TikTok. What are we going to do,
I know, I know. And then so I don't know if it was pressure, but I guess I had this vision of what freelancing would be. Then I went freelance, right? And then it was truly a struggle. Like not only was I super new to the illustration game, I didn't really, I wasn't super informed on the industry. So I didn't know where to go. Because like, in the design industry, there's different like art directors club, type directors club, things like that, right? That you kind of
Right.
know exist. But then in illustration, I didn't know what there was or like these different, facets and organizations in the
Yeah.
industry. I had zero idea. Uh,
Right.
so that was super tough. And then, so my first step towards that was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to do some research and I'm going to get an illustration agent, right? Not really knowing anything about
Sure.
agents as
Right.
well. So I asked the people from the community, the illustration community, and they were really generous enough to give me
Mm,
information about illustration agents. So that's why anytime someone asks me about getting representation or an agent, like I try to be super detailed with my description on like the pros and cons, right? Because for me, I knew nothing about the industry. So choosing
right.
the right agent is super important because
Hmm.
certain people are for like really experienced illustrators, like they don't really do any marketing for you or advertising. Like you were supposed to be the one getting it for yourself. Where me being really new, I wanted someone who had kind of like that pedigree where they're like in with all the, illustration societies and things like that. So I can kind of learn more about that. So
Interesting.
I got the agent, right? I got an agent that I dreamed of, honestly, rap, right? Rap art. And
Sure.
then
Right.
I realized like, oh, getting an agent isn't like 100% sure when that you're going to get work.
Right.
It's really just someone to help, manage you
Hmm.
and be that middleman in case there's any issues. And of course, they do get you work, and I'm super grateful. They've been monumental in my career. But I think something that people think is like, oh, if you get an agent, like you're set for life. Totally not
Right.
true.
Right.
Uh,
You still got to do that
totally
side hustle.
not true. Yeah, exactly. So it took a few years to kind of get to where I was. And it's funny because after those 2 years, I started building momentum with my illustration.
Mhm.
And at the same time, this job came around. So
Right. You're like, maybe I'll just do this on the side for some select projects and I can get something full time.
I know, because I was like, oh, like, do I want to go here? Because I was freelancing with them for a little bit. And then
Right.
they
Okay.
asked me if I wanted to kind of join later on. And I was like, oh, but then what if I'm missing out on these illustration projects that are so cool
Yeah.
because I have to go full time? But ultimately, I decided it's best for me to go full time because of just the way I work. Because I have a
Hmm.
lot of anxiety about
Sure.
finances,
Right.
scheduled, my routine, and in the future.
Healthcare, all those things,
Oh yeah, oh my God, yeah.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
so I was like healthcare, and honestly, I miss working on a team where you're a freelancer, you're kind of like a
Yes.
little island.
Yeah.
So all those things added up. I realized I miss having a team. I missed a routine in general. I mean, having a
Yeah.
team and a routine. So I realized that, after those 2 years, like freelancing, at least for now, isn't for me. Like full
It's
time.
it's really interesting to hear you talk about some of these pieces because like I think one thing, so maybe you can clear this up for me. Did you go to, was it all self-taught with the illustration work, or did you go to school for the illustration and design aspect of it?
I went to school for design. I majored
Okay.
in branding. So that's why I
Branding.
worked in agencies afterwards,
I
because we were
got
like,
you. Okay.
making logos, doing mood
Sure.
boards, doing art direction, things like that. But at Parsons, which is where I went, I
Sure.
never actually drew anything.
Oh, that's
Because
so funny.
it was like they're very separate, because there's an
Yes.
illustration major and then there's a communication design major, and I wanted to focus on branding. It wasn't until my senior year that I started illustrating,
I
because it was
see.
something I was
Okay.
super interested in, and I made it my thesis. But that's the only
Very
reason
cool.
that I was able to incorporate it, because none of my classes had it. So
Right.
yeah,
Well,
so
what I was curious about is because like, all right, so like, you start with like the branding, the design side. You find that like actually illustration is where I want to be. That's what like I really love to do. So you're doing more of that. But like as a result, I imagine like some of those conversations about, choosing the right agency. What is an agency going to do for you? Like what are the rates for a freelancer to charge? Like I imagine some of those conversations didn't really come from the school, like that you had to like more or less learn on your own and kind of get into it and reaching out to people. Is that correct?
oh yeah, no, like you
Oh
don't learn any
yeah,
of that at school.
I know. My biggest gripe, because I went to college design at NC State University, and it was kind of a foundational
Mm.
design degree, and it was great. Learned a lot about like design process, design fundamentals, but we never talked about the business side of design. And so when you
Nope.
come out, everyone expects you to land a big full-time job, but I think a lot of folks start in that freelance world. And I just remember how difficult it was to try to even like gauge, was I charging high? Was I charging low? What should I be doing? And I think that's like something that I'm taking away. A big piece of it is like how much work you had to put in to like get to where you are in illustration to know what you're charging, and how I think, looking back, if you give any advice to people, it sounds like it's reaching out and connecting with more illustrators, because it doesn't sound like the schools are giving us that proper business side of design.
No, absolutely not. I think in order to gauge your price, which honestly is super important, I learned that lesson way early on where I worked with my first big client. The project got canceled and I didn't know anything about kill fees and things like that. So I got
Right.
nothing. Uh,
Yeah.
so,
Brutal.
I think it takes a big screw up like that, or a big mistake like that, in other words, to kind of know like, okay, you need to protect yourself. And if things happen, make sure you charge what you're worth, right?
Yes.
And a lot of people are like, what's the rate? Like, what rate should I be charging? Personally, and I actually learned this from my agent, is that I actually don't, at least for illustration, work is different, like for when I work at Vice, but my process for doing price is actually project based,
Mm,
right? So the way that we do that, and a lot of times, one of the biggest tips I learned is when people say, "What's your rate? Like, what's your budget for this, or what's your
right.
price for this?" Right? I always shoot back the question. My agent and I, we normally work with the client's budgets and needs and try to be as flexible as possible to accommodate you. What is your budget? Even a ballpark range would be very helpful.
Smart.
And 9 out of 10 times, they will have a budget in mind, of course, because any company, like when you're a producer, my boyfriend's a producer, when
Yeah.
you have a project, you have a budget for it. Of course you
Oh
do.
yeah. They know. They're just not telling you,
Oh, of course they
They
know.
know.
Yeah.
They know. Of course they want to spend.
And like even on the work side here, when I've been an agency and stuff, I know the money that we're supposed to spend. So they kind of know. And people who cannot give you a number, right? They either say, let me get back to you with details, which happens a lot to me too. That's like 50-50. Like, oh, like, let me get back to you with that, right? The details. And the people who don't answer you, a lot of those times, I would say that's kind of a red flag.
Yeah, they're not the
For
right fit
that
anyway.
project, that might not be the right fit, because it sounds like it's going to be difficult to work with already. Of course, that's just my own experience, but people who have said like, oh, like we don't have a budget, we kind of want to see where it goes, or like we want to work with your
Yeah.
rate. They're either trying to price gauge you of other artists that they're asking, or and that's very common too, or they kind of want to see how low you'll go, which is
Right.
not really, it's not really, I think, a style that people want to work with.
No, and how much more flattering is it if someone comes to you and they say like, hey, this is our budget. We really want you. We want you to be the artist we work with, right? It's not like this, what would you charge for this? Maybe we'll come back to you. You know, I want people to want to work with Dash. I want people to want to work with us, you know, and it's the same for you too. It's like, come with, confidence. And I like what your response is to those questions. We do something similar. We'll throw like, people are like, what does this typically cost? And it's like, well, we have different budget ranges. It could be, insert low, medium, high cost to kind of show clients where your range is and let them tell you what their budget is in that regard. Or if they don't fit any of those ranges, then you identify really quickly that it's like not a good fit right away, if like they don't even fit in the low end. So I think that's really smart. So
Oh, yeah.
we talked about red flags, right? So when a client doesn't want to like give you a budget or they're trying to get you to kind of weigh in on that, what are some other like red flags that you try to like keep an eye out for that maybe other illustrators or designers should be conscious of?
Another red flag. I mean, that was definitely the most obvious one.
Mm-hmm.
And another one is if they don't have a contract or they
Mm-hmm.
don't want to sign your contract, right? So I think that that is kind of a red flag as well. I mean, I would never work on a project I didn't sign a contract for.
Sure, of course.
Personally, just because so many things have gone wrong. So many people, if they can push the envelope, they will. And a lot of times it's because they don't know what's wrong. So it's
Right.
not their fault either, right? But don't, if there's no contract, and you've probably heard this a lot, if there's no contract, I think that that is a giant red flag.
Stay
And
away.
yeah, and in the contract, a red flag that I've seen, either you have to put this yourself or they'll put it, is kind of like a number of rounds, right, that you're willing to do for revisions. If people are like, oh, we don't want to set a round of revisions, that's also kind of a red flag because then there's no end date to your project unless there's a solid deadline. But
Right.
otherwise, I've gone, we've all gone through those projects where you're like on round 50, and then you're like, dang, I should have put in my, in my scope, like, this round and this round. So right now I have like, something like, okay, one round in the sketching phase, right? You get one free round then, and then you get another free round after you've seen the digital artwork.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last round could be like minor tweaks, right? And in parentheses, I'll have like cannot exceed more than 2 hours of labor or X amount of hours of labor,
Sure.
depending
Right.
on how much the hours is, right? So I would make your rounds of revisions super clear. And then I kind of have a little caveat in the contract saying like, oh, you know, if you want more rounds of revisions, always, possible, will
Sure.
be charged, at this rate or whatever, will be this amount of money every round, kind of things like that. So that kind
That's
of
so
stops them a
smart.
little bit.
Yeah, and having that, like, because naturally when projects kick off, everyone's in a good spirit, everyone's in good mood. And
Yeah.
so it's easier to be like on good terms versus like coming back after like round 6 and be like, you punks, I keep asking me to do all this stuff, So I think that's really good.
I
Okay,
know.
here's
Then your
another
dream
here's
project's a nightmare.
that's right. That's right. All right. So on the other end, as a producer at Dash, let's say Loe Lee, I want to come hire you. What are some green flags that you look at with a client? Like what are some things you're like, oh, I'm so glad they approached this project this way. Like what could producers who are listening do when they want to hire an illustrator that would really set everyone up for success and make the illustrator really excited to work on the project?
Oh yeah. I mean, there are so many green lights that I just like absolutely love when I see it. It makes me so happy. So so one of the ones definitely is if you already have like a brief, and it doesn't have to be super extensive, even if you just have like the general direction of the project, like, oh, this is our concept, right? So an example of honestly a dream project was the
Yeah.
Coca-Cola project,
Yeah.
because they already had a brief and they were like, this is our concept. We want to do something that you can work, that has like the work study vibe, kind of like lo-fi beats kind of thing. And they
Yeah.
added their own beats. So that was the concept. So they wanted to do something kind of dreamy like that. And I was like, oh, that fits my style, blah, blah. And then in their deck as well, they had a mood board. And then the mood board is just my illustrations. And I'm like, I'm living.
Oh, that's
Like
perfect.
what? Like, okay, so my style actually fits what they want, because a lot of times as an illustrator, especially if the client's more commercial or like their brand is a little different from you, you have to adjust your style. You have to
Sure.
you kind of have to work with the client a little bit. Right.
Right.
And then, so if the mood board has, that person's work, even if some of it, that's super like
Oh, I
encouraging.
know. It's always kind of awkward. It's like, here is all these other illustrators' work that we want you to do, versus like,
Like,
here's all
oh,
this mood board from your project. You're like, did y'all hire the right person? Are y'all looking for me?
I know.
So awkward.
Oh my God. And then the third thing, and this is actually really weird because I think some people might think this is a red flag, But oftentimes the most enjoyable projects that I've done is when someone on the other side, if this is the case, like if they're like, hey, I've never done this before. Like, for example, I worked with a couple of big companies. It doesn't matter the size, honestly. Like you think, oh,
Sure.
small company, they don't know. But even big companies, they may not know. So they're
Sure.
like, I'm doing a book for the first time, or we're doing a book for the first time, or we're doing, out of home ads for the first time. We're learning this as well. So, please collaborate with us. Please like let
Oh,
us know how we can work together and make this easier. So that's been a lot of the cases, especially for surprisingly my larger clients. And it's in those cases where like you can kind of take the lead on where you want the vision to go, and then you're kind of walking hand in hand. That it's so much better because it's okay. Like it's okay if they're doing it for the first time, if especially if you
right.
know your process. And it's okay
Right.
if I'm doing it for the first time because sometimes it is too. So you're kind of when you're more open about it, your teamwork is so much better. Like it's not
Yes.
artist versus client. It's like you guys are walking the same direction. And then just kind of getting that out in the air. It's the worst when people pretend to know what's going on. And then
Oh,
there's so much
yes.
miscommunication or like hidden information that kind of creates obstacles later. So if you kind of get it out there, like, oh, this is my first time doing a book, or this is my first time, blah, 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 like that's okay. Like I totally don't care. I think that's better because now we can kind of do this process together.
100%. And it's so interesting. I think it's like this mentality that everyone has to know everything. Like we all come to the table and no one wants to look like an idiot. So they're like, oh, yeah, I've done this before. I know how to do this. Or they try to pretend like they do. And I think the lesson to be learned from anyone who's on the client side listening to this versus someone on the creative side is just to be transparent and open in those early conversations, right? Because no one, ideally with the right partnerships, no one's trying to pull one over on the other person, but just laying everything out there, talking through the process. Or, I've even found sometimes, even as someone who's really involved in hiring creatives, right, on a regular basis, that I've even made assumptions sometimes on how we should do stuff. And then only to talk to the creative and they're like, actually, I know you have this listed here as a deliverable. What if we tried this instead? I think it would get across to the client what we're going for. I'm like, oh, wow, that's a really smart idea. And so coming into that conversation, like open, like have your process, be willing to talk through it, but having both parties be willing to like change and finesse things, I think that just heightens like the collaboration and makes for a better product. So that's really great to hear.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It's not always client versus artist. Honestly, my best projects came from us working together. Like
Yeah.
it's not always my ideas that are the best. It's like even when I work on a team, like it's really collaborative and
Yeah.
together your ideas like grow and grow and grow. That's the ideal situation at least, you
Of
know.
course, of course. Well, you were talking about a second ago, that Coca-Cola, you mentioned one of your favorite projects, just how they came to you. They really had things prepared. They had a mood board of your work. Do you feel like the topic, let me try to think about the best way to phrase this. Like, do you have dream clients, like brands that you really want to work for? Or is it more about their openness and willingness to work with you as a designer that's more important than it is on what the brand actually does? Does that make sense? So is it more, do you have like brands that you really want to work with? Or is it more important on just the style of the people that you get to work with that's most important?
That's a really good question. It's funny because I was struggling so much just so recently. I was like almost like tearing up when I started getting these
Mm,
inquiries. And it's only this year that I have been getting these really large inquiries, right? A lot of stuff is in progress or just done this year. This is not live yet. But when it's live, I think it's going to feel really surreal because before this,
mm.
I was really struggling. So to me, it's just been a really pleasant, shocking surprise to be able to work with these clients in my respect. But for me, I try not to have expectations because I'd
Mm.
rather be super pleasantly surprised and kind of just like have like a happy to be here kind of attitude
Yeah.
with self-respect, of
Of
course, right?
course,
I
of
don't want to
course, of
be laughed
course.
on either.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, but if there was a dream kind of project, something I've always thought about was doing kind of like a book cover, right? I
Oh,
would love to
fun.
do some kind of fantasy book cover or like fictional book, which I think is really fits my style because like I love kind of illustrating this kind of narrative in my illustrations. Funnily, I haven't done that yet, but
Really?
maybe
Oh, that's
later. Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, yeah.
Hey, maybe this is the episode that just triggers it. So if anyone out there is listening to Low, let's
Putting
get
it
her a
out into the
fantasy book
universe.
cover. Exactly. All right. We were talking a little bit about this at the very beginning, right before we started, but I want to change the conversation a little bit to sort of some like technical aspects, because I think there's a lot of folks out there who are illustrators or designers, but have never dreamt of doing a mural, right? Because that is just a different operation, going from something that's a little bit more either located on your desktop or your drawing to something at that scale. How do you go about like working at scale? You know, are there some things when you're approaching a mural that are like really important to think of up front? I'd love to dive into that a little bit more.
Oh yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to make something clear. If you can draw, you can do a mural. Like you don't need
There you
some
go.
miraculous ability to do it, because I mean, I knew nothing. I started doing it and now I have a process. So that's just how everything goes, right?
Cool. Yeah,
So
right.
the first thing would probably be, do your drawing at your scale first, right? So some of the things is like, I want to go to, I want to approach this local shop that I always go to and I love, and I want to do a mural for them, which is honestly how the first official one started for me. I went to my favorite coffee shop and I just asked for the owner and I was like, I love this place. I come here all the time. We say hi to each other. Can I do a mural here? Right. And they're like, yeah, like let's arrange something. Luckily they said that, right? Of course I asked a million people and one person said yes, but all you need is one person, right? So,
that's right. And your one person just happened to be your favorite coffee shop, so that's good.
Yeah, exactly. So first is to get the dimensions of the wall, right? Get the exact dimensions. That's going to save you so much time, because then you can sketch it at the exact ratio, on your iPad or, on paper or anything like that. Back then, I don't even know if I had an iPad, so I did it on paper.
Nice.
But as long as the ratio is correct, you're golden, right? But you need to stress, especially the client, that it has to be exact, because otherwise, you'll draw it in one kind of ratio or one scale, and then it's actually much more, horizontally longer than that.
Oh yeah, and then you're like, what the hell am I going to put? Yeah, what the hell am I going to put here? Like, oh gosh.
Yeah. So the second thing is I would also do a site visit just to be like, does this match? How much room is there between this wall and the wall in front of it? And the reason that I say that is because if there's enough room, right, and you have a tight deadline per se, you can use a projector. Right. So get a projector, even if it's a small battery powered projector, as long as you can upload, connect it USB to your artwork, you can project it onto the wall. And sometimes I like to do this for, time's sake and for speed's sake, but also it really gives clients, especially if they're not very visual, like exactly how it's going to look. Because sometimes,
smart.
Because when you do the sketch, right, and you show them the sketch via email, they have a different perspective on it because they're seeing it so small. So sometimes they're like, oh, like they kind of focus on these little details and they don't realize like how big to life it is when it's on the wall. So when they see it, they're like, wow, right? Or they're like, oh, yay, like they get kind of excited. So that's when you project it, right? So I would leave the projector, tape that projector down in place so it doesn't move, and then I tape the square around it so it's kind of like this invisible barrier, but it allows people to know like, oh, okay, don't cross this tape line on the floor, which actually works surprisingly even outside. So I tape the projector down and then I take a pencil and then I sketch. And I think the most important part is to get the sketch down at least in one day. Right, try to get the sketch down as much as possible, because when you move that projector again, or even when you turn it on again, magically nothing lines up. I don't know why, even though
it's just shifted a little bit somehow.
It's just shifted. I don't know how. So just try to get the sketch down like immediately, right? And then after that, once you have it sketched, the outlines at least, then then you can fill it in. And some people, they do X's and O's. I do lines, and then I actually do like little indicators along the lines, like the line width. So I'll put like a square indicator along the sketch to be like, this line is this thickness, this line is this thickness. And of course I have a reference too, right? You're not going to draw it blindly from memory.
Sure,
so
right.
Yeah. So after that, really it's the fun part. What I also like to do is, when you have the colored artwork, I label all the colors, right? Because you don't want to buy 35 colors. First of all,
right.
Yeah, so you want to do like 10 to 20 colors maybe, and then I label the colors onto the artwork. Like I do, like, let's say lavender, right? LAV. So I'll write LAV on that colored section, and then I'll also make like a color swatch, like just like a paper, with the color scores on it, and I'll write LAV, right, on all those places. And then I'll actually, for that exact section that's on the wall, that's highlighted in that section, I'll write LAV too. So I'll kind of color code everything. I color code that map, the color map, and then I
Yeah.
have my artwork, and then I color code the artwork too. So it's almost like a giant adult coloring book.
That's what I was going to
Right.
say. It's like, well, really what you're doing, and it makes so much sense, is you're simplifying as much as possible so that once you get into it, because particularly I would imagine if it's a big mural and it's taking a while, you don't want to get like tired and just like not see the full picture and make a little error on something. So having those like labels and things, I'm sure mean the world to you when you're actually in
It's a
it creating it.
lifesaver. Trust me, when you're looking at it at 3 inches and you're just looking at a wall, like you don't see anything because it's so close to your face. It's only when you stand back really far do you see the whole thing. So that's the biggest
Interesting.
difference.
So, all right. So I have a question, not to put you on the spot here. You don't have to say any client
No
names,
worries at
but
all.
have you, just because like there's so many little things here that like, the projector shifts or you label something wrong and paint it the wrong area. Like I'm sure this process has been flushed out through trial and error of various things
Oh,
happening.
yes.
Do you have like a horror story with like, we don't have to talk about clients, but a horror story where something like, went wrong or like you realize you painted something wrong with the wrong color? Like how'd you react to it or how'd you fix it?
Yeah. So it's really funny. So because I've been working, especially with Chinatown, right? This has been
Mhm.
more recently. I talked to Welcome to Chinatown, which is the organization I work with,
Cool.
and then I
Yeah.
also work with Chinese Planning Council, Chinese American Planning Council of Chinatown,
Oh,
which is the
nice.
big council that's been here forever, right? And then does all these organizational things, helps all the low income kids. My parents were CPC kids, like that, they've
Nice.
been here forever. So talking to them as well, it's really important for people of the community to join in, I think, too. And I love that idea. So that's kind of where a lot of this adult coloring book stuff started because I want people who have no experience to just get up and do it. You don't need experience to do this,
Right.
right? You're just painting a wall. You're painting a wall like any other wall. And the paint you're using is also interior paint. It's not a
Hmm.
special paint. I literally go to Home Depot and Lowe's and I'm like, here is my color map, my color swatches.
Right.
Please help me match these colors. And honestly, they can do anything. Those people are amazing. They'll do the exact colors.
That's great.
It's not some secret special mural paint. It's interior paint because that's safe for you, right? It's safe, and you don't need primer. It goes right on the wall, and it's cheap. It's
That's so
amazing.
cool.
It's
Yeah, it's great.
perfect.
Make your life easier, right?
Make
Just
your
go to
life easier. Why
Lowe's.
are you mixing acrylics? Yeah, no, I mean some people do, so there's no shame in that. But I go to Home Depot and Lowe's, so but
That's really
but
funny.
yeah, I guess the one horror story is that while we're painting this, and I'm painting this with my cousin, who's kind of like a
Sure.
brother to me, and my boyfriend, who both are actually on this talk right now, this
Oh,
clubhouse.
nice.
So we were doing two murals in the same place. It was in one of the community places in Chinatown, and then they're kind of different halls of each other. So we were on a really tight schedule. So I
Sure,
was
sure,
working
sure.
on one mural, and I was like, "Yeah, you guys go ahead, paint the mural on the other wall. It's all labeled, right?" But then a lot of the colors are super similar, and when it's dry versus when it's
Oh,
wet, also
right.
looks so different. The paint.
Oh my gosh.
So
Okay.
I remember that I was just kind of painting the first mural, and then on the other side of the hallway, I hear, "Oh shit! Oh shit! Is this? I think this is the wrong blue."
Oh no.
Everyone was like, "Don't tell Lauren," but no, it was fine. But the magic of it is that it's just paint, so you could just
Right. You can paint over it. That's true. It
yeah.
just adds more work to your day, but otherwise it's fixable stuff, which is really cool.
Totally fixable. And it's actually really funny because so many of these colors, especially when they're wet versus dried, they look
Yeah.
so similar because a lot of them are different tones of each other. Like the shadow of a person is very similar to the color of what they
Yes.
are, just a little darker. So it was hilarious. And that's happened to me a lot too. Like I do the
Oh, that's
same thing.
funny.
So, but it's just
Like, wait a minute, does this
painting.
color go here? These look like the same. Which one's which? It's like tints and shades of the same color. It's like probably
Oh my
hard
God,
to like
especially
readily
if you come
identify
on
them.
another day because you're like,
Yeah.
where was I?
That's too funny. Lo, one thing that I picked up just from your talk, which is really interesting, I think phenomenal, is your involvement in the community. You're talking about the Chinese Planning Council, your parents being involved with that, you being involved with that. Was that something that just kind of naturally happened? Like, do you remember like the activism that you've been kind of taking or trying to be more involved in the community that just sort of naturally come about? Or like, how did all that come to be?
Sure. So I've been in the Chinatown community, I mean, my whole life. And then because my parents, they immigrated here, my grandparents immigrated here, they grew up here. And then when I was a little bit older, I went to New Jersey for like high
Okay.
school and stuff like that. And then when I went to college, I was back in New York. So I came back to Chinatown, right? Because we kind of have our roots here. But even while I was growing up in Chinatown, and even though I was in high school in New Jersey, I actually did all my volunteering and summer work in Chinatown, right? So I
Cool.
already volunteered here. So I was
Oh,
volunteering here
nice.
teaching kids. It's something different. It's called Fun Saturdays. I think that program is still there, but
So
we're
fun.
teaching them volleyball, teaching them English, like things like that, right? So volunteering here, it was a little bit, I think it may be a little bit challenging if you don't
Mm,
really know the community that well.
sure.
But then when COVID hit, right, there was a lot of ostracization, I think, in
Yeah.
Chinatown and kind of living it. I know you see like a lot of videos, a lot of people see all these
Sure.
videos, right? But to be there is a lot more real and like a lot more, I would say, shocking, especially with these, these, I would say, like anti-Asian attacks, right? So you see the videos on the news, and then I'm like, whoa, I live there. So
Yeah.
it's really it adds like this, it's like, oh, people are watching it, but I'm actually living it, right?
Right.
So there's like this, it's kind of very surreal and a little bit scary. So when all of this started happening, and it's been happening since the pandemic started last year, it
Right.
wasn't just recently, it's just that
Right.
it's been brought to light recently, right? So when that started happening, a lot of these community organizations, these grassroots organizations, started coming up. Welcome to Chinatown was one of them. It is just people like you and me, we're all like in the professional world, or we do, whatever. And we're like, we want to support our community. So they used their experience, in their business or whatever to kind of organize these things, which is what happened. So the founders of Welcome to Chinatown, I think they work in corporate companies, and I think they're directors as well. So they know how to kind of delegate and do all these things.
Sure.
So,
Right.
and they also are very savvy at social media, which a lot of people in
Yeah.
Chinatown, because they're a little older, they don't know, or they're very
Sure. Of
local and
course.
they may not
Right.
know English. So a lot of these
Yeah.
restaurants or these places, they don't have a social media, but
Right.
it takes a couple of organizations to kind of just help out. So it was then when I saw that happening, right? I was like, wow, what can I do?
Mm,
Right. I just feel
mm,
like I don't really have that much business acumen. Like, I don't know, I
sure.
don't have, I want to offer what I can offer. And I was like, I know how to draw. Like, I can offer them
Yeah.
if any business wants a mural, I'll do it. Like, I think it helps with like the marketing because, there's a lot of places where you create opportunities where people can share the location. And I think a mural is one of them, where you take the
Mm,
photo and then you share it on social media, and you don't have to have the owners or whoever ask you to share, right? Because that gets
right.
kind of awkward,
Yeah.
especially if you don't know the language. So, creating these pockets of opportunity for them to kind of share the location and kind of help bring people back into Chinatown. So that was kind of what me and Welcome to Chinatown talked about. And we kind of asked, but it's of course it's at the discretion of any of the businesses. We kind of just like
Right.
send an email out to like the newsletter and just see if anyone was interested. But a lot of people surprisingly were really interested.
That's
So
so cool.
it was great. And then I guess the rest of it is history. I mean, we've
Yeah.
done, unfortunately, so we raised the money, right? And then we raised about 10K, which was really good. But unfortunately, during this time, because it takes a long time to do these murals, especially with
Right.
work, right?
Sure. Of course.
Your day job. So, unfortunately, some of those businesses ended up closing up.
Mm,
But in general, I think of the 10 that we were supposed to do, we're still doing 7 or 8. So I think we're doing 8. So I think it's pretty good. And to get to know the people who are part of,
yeah.
these places that I've been going to for so long, just getting to
Right.
the owners and like the people who run it, just like their story. I mean, it's the best part, honestly.
Well, a big takeaway for me on what you talked about, and I think it's important for, any creative listening today, is you talk about pockets of opportunity. And I don't want to let that slip by because I think that's really important. I think from a process of change, whenever we feel like there is collectively something that needs to shift, like something is wrong or wanting to help, I think sometimes there's this default to just political leaders, that's their stuff. What can I do? I'm just a single individual. How can I change anything? But I think that pockets of opportunity is something that everyone should consider when you look at your local community or look at ways that you can get involved. Even if it is just a little bit of an effort, it's a little bit of something in that pocket of opportunity in your community that could change someone else's opinion or some reflection on something, right? And so I think just as creatives, it's unique that we have this ability to create artwork that can be seen by so many people. And, art and design is so interesting just because it triggers so many different types of emotions. It can make people feel a certain way. It can be impactful. It can be educational. It can do a lot. And so I think, we're not giving ourselves enough credit as designers on what we can do and what we can change with those pockets of opportunity. So that was really well said, Loe, and I appreciate you sharing all that community involvement with us today. We only have about 15 minutes left. And so at the very end here, I'd like to open it up to any questions. If anyone is listening, I'd love for you to raise a hand and ask Loe a question if you have one. While I'm waiting for that, Loe, we did have a few folks who weighed in on social media with a couple of questions. I'll get to those in a second. I'll let Maren, my producer who's listening, she can weigh in with a question. Let's see her hop in here. Hey, Maren, can you hear us? Hey.
Hi. Nice to meet you. Oh yeah, and thank you for asking that. So the Hope and NYC series, I think it's probably my favorite series just because it's something that I did last year, but this year has recently, for some reason, gotten a lot of press. So that kind of started when, my boyfriend actually, he takes a lot of photos. So he takes really beautiful photos. So I was kind of thinking it would be really cool to kind of combine what I'm doing with what he's doing because a lot of the photos they're taking just kind of like when we're on our walks. And while we were walking around New York City last year, it was pretty bleak. I think I would say it was pretty unrecognizable. It was the first time I went to Times Square and it was totally empty. Anywhere you went, totally empty. Shops closing up. There's for sale location signs on places you would never think there are. It's just very bleak. You just don't even recognize it. But then honestly, as time started going on, I saw a lot of people doing things to kind of spark hope, right? Whether that's like, holding signs or putting signs on their window and trying to encourage hope or, just people hustling and bustling about, people still going, to their delis and working. There's just so much grit here in New York City, as stereotypical it is, that honestly, it's really inspiring because everyone is very tough here. Like, the mentality is like, this is tough, but we're gonna get through it, like we always have, right? So a lot of that was kind of the inspiration for what I was doing. And we have, I take photos amateurly, right? And then my boyfriend photos. So I was like, instead of drawing New York, I think these photos show it the best. So I wanted to show the feeling of hope I was feeling kind of just in the area and kind of depicting it in my own way, if that makes sense. And it's totally personal piece. It was just something to do some exploration, something I did for fun. So sometimes people throw me some hate comments like, you're like copying like Spirited Away or like blah blah blah. I was like, I do love Miyazaki. He's a huge inspiration of mine. But these weren't to copy anyone or like sell to anybody. It's just like something I just felt like doing and exploring. And I guess anything like that was also conscious, but that's honestly been one of the favorite series that I've done this year because I was able to kind of combine the two mediums and I've never done it before. Oh yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, we started doing prints. It was actually my boyfriend's idea. He said we should make a shop, and I've just been so busy. Then once they sold out, I'm like, I'm gonna print more, and then it goes on and on and on. So I always say that, and then I'm like, I have to go print more.
Oh, I know time is so limited. So, well, to Mary's point, when it does come back up, we'll definitely have to get some prints for our studio. We did have a social question come in that actually kind of builds off of what Marion was talking towards. Someone asked us, and I don't know if they meant it this way, but how do you stay motivated? And particularly, I think in this last year, it was so hard. You talk about walking around New York and just how different it felt. Just wasn't the same place. With all this despair really coming from 2020, like how did you stay motivated through it? How did you find the creativity that you needed?
That's a really good question because I've been asked this question a couple of times.
Mm,
So before, right, I would say before even last year, before 2020, a lot of my productivity was motivated by anxiety. This
mm,
like anxiety that I have to be making something, I have to be productive in order to like get anywhere in my life or like to feel like I'm not some lazy potato on the couch. Like
mm.
I feel like I'm not useless. I feel like I must make something. And I think social media, especially because I was a little bit newer to it, definitely feel that. And I'm just a newbie to it. So I'm like,
Sure.
everyone's telling me like, oh, post every day or like, post to this schedule and like, like your content creator. And then I think some time around last year, I didn't want to draw anything. I was totally
Yeah.
unmotivated and I didn't have the mental capacity dealing with all the stuff around me that I could draw. And
Mm,
I felt even further guilt from not posting anything on social media, as really seriously ridiculous as that sounds. But I think that's something I think a lot of creators go through.
hmm.
And then it just came to the point where I thought to myself, like, you know what, I'm an artist. I'm not a content creator. Like, I'm not here to put stuff out on a schedule because
Right.
if I do, that work is not my best work. And now everyone's looking at it. So
Hmm.
I wanted to just pull back and say, I'm just going to make and take my time and make stuff that really inspires me, which is where Hope and NYC comes from because
Mm,
I don't know how many personal pieces I've made or put out this year or even last year because I didn't want to put out anything.
right.
I just wanted to take my time and explore something new. So that's where the exploration came from. And then that's where my favorite work has come from.
Mm,
And that honestly was inspired by things like watching movies or like
yeah.
reading comic books, which I did a lot of last year, or reading books, which I did a lot of last year because there was a lot of staying at home. So it doesn't have to be from another artist you know, things like that. It could just be from things that you enjoy at home. So I took a lot of inspiration from, so surprisingly, I just took so much inspiration last year from like animes, as
Oh,
funny
I
as
love
it
it.
sounds. Yeah, because my cousin, I think he's on here, but he introduced it to me a few years ago. But I really got into it during the pandemic, especially
Oh,
because
yeah.
I'm at home, and
Yeah. What else are you gonna do?
no, I mean I watch it even now. I don't have to be at home, so yeah, it comes from everything that you do in regular life that I would say doesn't necessarily have to be involved with art because if you're creating all the time, you don't have any time to like breathe or think, and then your
Right.
creativity has no time to recharge.
Well, I
So
love that you talk towards like there's so much pressure that comes from the social media side of things. Like, cause you get on there, you see other artists that are posting stuff and you're like, my gosh, this looks amazing. I need to be posting stuff more as well. And so there is a tendency to kind of just create stuff to share. But I really love that you're drawing attention to look, operate on your own schedule, create something that may mean something to you, not trying to do like a content calendar, just put stuff out. I think that's important
oh
from an
yeah.
artist and designer standpoint. Um, well, let's see. Maybe one more here. We had another question from the social channels on Instagram. They asked what the highlight of your career is so far. Is there anything that you look back on as being the highlight of your career, whether it was a project or someone you got to meet, or I don't know, is there a highlight to your career at this point in time?
A highlight to my career.
That's a tough question. The
I
ins-
know,
the
I
the
don't
social
know if I
audience is
can
coming in
have
hot.
one. I guess honestly, I would say surprisingly, it would be sometime last year, very
Hmm.
surprisingly, right?
Hmm.
When I landed my first big campaign, and that was like when I was being pitched against artists that I admired and look up to, and I was like, oh, I'm just part of the pile, but I'm just happy to be here. And it was actually for Seamless and the Seamless Subway ads. They're just so famous around here, right? So I was like, oh, it'd be a dream to work on it. I can't even believe I'm in the mix, but I'm just happy to be here. And then when they picked me, who was super new, I just entered the illustration industry like, maybe last year, a little before that.
Right.
So the fact they took a chance on me and then we both kind of admitted to each other, just like the same thing, that we're not really sure what we're doing. This is both our first time because that's their first time taking those ad in-house and it was my first
Oh,
time doing a
cool.
big ad campaign. That working together and learning through the process and just knowing like, oh, we're all learning this together. Big shout out to the AD, Caitlin Rich and the copywriter Hank Green there, because it was so collaborative and they were really thankful. And to see it out on the subways all year.
Yeah.
I mean, it was surreal because I take the subway all the time. I take it every
You're
single
like, I know, you're like, that's my stuff, you know?
Oh my
You're
God,
like telling random strangers, like, do you see this?
Yeah.
I know.
Or like my mom and my dad would take the subway. They're like, I saw your stuff. And I'm like, wow, you know? So I think
That's great.
right now is like a really high point.
I love it. I love it. Well, Loe, I appreciate you coming and hanging out with us today. I know everyone listening got a lot of information. You know, my big takeaway is I feel like I have a step-by-step process on how to make a mural now, which is great. And for folks who weren't taking notes, I did. Get the exact dimensions. Make sure you do a site visit. Get a projector. Have the visual idea of where it's going. Tape projector down. That's the crucial one. We can't forget about that one. Sketch it down in one take. You don't want to try to come back. And then fill in the lines and a little bit of indicators. So, you know, now we can all credit the Loe Lee process when we come to submit a mural. There we go.
That's a lot of people's process.
Well, Loe, hopefully sometime at an event here in the future, we'll be able to hang out and meet in person. For everyone who joined us today, thank you so much. If this is your first time, Mograph Lunch is a weekly thing we do where we try to bring artists, designers, studio owners together for a little round table for a conversation, just to find out what we've all been up to, what we're working on, various struggles, all the good stuff. If you know someone or like to recommend someone to come and be on the show, you can reach me on Twitter at @Mac_motion, or you can reach us at the studio at @_studio. We'd love to take recommendations and see who are some folks you're leaning towards. Thanks so much. And before I run, let me give people directions to your website because I want people to go see the amazing work. It's going to be Lauren Elizabeth. LaurenElizabethLee.com. LaurenElizabethLee.com. You can check out all of Loe's amazing work. And then your Instagram handle, I'll give that to folks as well too, is by Loe Lee. So make sure to check out her work. Phenomenal stuff here. And Loe, thanks for being on the show.
Oh my God, thanks for having me and thanks for all the questions.
Of course, good times. Well, enjoy your weekend. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you all next week.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Bye. Whoa, that was so great, Loe. You're so personable and easy to talk to. My goodness.
Oh, really? Oh, thanks.
Yeah, that was wonderful. I think there's a lot of great tidbits we got out of that conversation, and I'll work with Madison over the next coming weeks. We're basically like I think 4 or 5 episodes ahead on what we're putting up on YouTube. So this will probably come out in about a month or so. But I'll make sure to share it with you so you can share it around and give it to anyone in your network.
Oh, yay. Thanks so much. It was so good to meet you. You're so fun to talk to.
Oh, thanks. I love this stuff. It's the one quick way I can get to meet a lot of different people, and we're just thrilled you were able to jump on the show with us. I don't know what your plans are. Oh, there's Marin. She came in from the other room.
Hi, I love your work. I just want to say hi.
I love that, Marin, you jumped in from the other room.
I was listening at my desk.
That's so great.
Because I want to go listen.
Oh, you're the best. Yes. So I don't know what your plans are this September, but September 23rd and 24th, we're actually throwing an animation and motion design festival here in Raleigh called the Dash Bash. So if you feel optimistic about traveling, want to come down to Raleigh, you should come hang out in person. We'd love to entertain you down here.
Oh, that would be awesome. I actually think I'm going to Alabama around that time. So
hey, just swing on through North Carolina on the way down. Well, perfect. Well, Loe, have a great weekend, and I'm sure I'll catch you here soon.
You too. Bye.
All right, take care. Bye. Hey, y'all. Thanks again for joining us for Mograph Lunch. As a reminder, this is just the first part of a longer conversation that happens every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on Clubhouse. We'll continue the NPG conversation as we talk about news, projects, and general industry advice. And then we'll open up the door on Clubhouse to answer questions live, interact with some of your peers, and get to know some of the folks in the industry. Follow the link below for more information, and we will see you next week.